A question of when, not if, is how the world is looking at a possible exchange between Iran and Israel, along with all the other parties and players involved in the region. Joining me live now to decode this and add some perspective on a very multi-layered and complicated story, General Amos Yadlin. He's a former head of the IDF's military intelligence. Welcome, General. Thank you very much for your time. And also with us is Sushant Sarini, Senior Fellow of the Observer Research Foundation and a well-known strategic affairs expert. General Yadlin, I'd like to come to you first. The killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Iran has made it practically certain that there is going to be some kind of a military escalation from Iran's side. It doesn't appear to have happened yet. How do you assess what's happening right now? When will that escalation take place in your view, and in what form, sir?
I don't agree with the assumption that I heard in the broadcasting that it's an issue of when and not if. I think both countries, according to the very good presentation of yours, know that a war will be devastating for both. And both are trying to avoid war. By the way, the Iranian strategy was always using their own proxies to attack Israel and being very careful not to absorb a direct Israeli response because they know that they are vulnerable. If you remember April, Israel was excellent, 99% in defense, against 500 projectiles, 300 from Iran, ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, another 200 from their proxies, and nothing happened. And then Israel, with 3 missiles, were able to destroy S-300 Iranian. This was only a signal. Yes. So when I look today at the decision-making process in Iran, they may say to themselves, Ismail Haniyeh is a Sunni Arab. We are not basically going to destroy Iran because of ISIS-like terror organization. And there is a new president there that want the economy to be better, that want maybe to go back to the nuclear deal. And then they see that Israel this time is not going to respond signally. They are going to respond very aggressively. And they see the Americans coming, and they know that there is a coalition, even though a covert coalition. Yes. So I think they are now rethinking their response.
Very interesting. So Iran may be rethinking its response. Sushant Sareen, how do you see this? You know, Iran has made all the noises, consistent noises about how there is most definitely going to be a response, a revenge attack, punitive attacks against Israel. Like General Yadlin said, this won't be the first time. Only in April this year, there was, a big attack with many projectiles from Iranian territory, so this won't be a first. But he says Iran may actually be rethinking everything at this point of time. How do you see it, Sushant?
Look, I think in a very rational perspective, and rationality is very subjective, I would probably go along with General Yadlin because, Iran knows that Israel has a retaliatory capacity. When we are talking about an exchange between Iran and Israel, we've seen what Iran can throw. Perhaps they can throw some more. But we've also seen that the Israeli defenses are pretty robust. And in case something similar happens, what happened in April, or, and when you say that when and not if, then you also have to ask how much. Right. So if there is no mass casualty, there's just some, ego trip which Iran goes on to, that we've directly attacked Israel, but there's no damage which is done, then things can, go back to whatever is normal in this region. But if there was to be some kind of mass casualty, then I think Israel's hands would be forced. And Israel has shown capability, not just about the kind of attacks that have taken place, whether it's cyber attacks, whether it's taking out of the S-300 missile system, or the kind of targeted assassinations that have happened. If you can get rid of a terrorist like Ismail Haniyeh, you can just as well attack virtually anybody in Iran. You have that reach. And then you also have the missile systems and other systems to attack Iran directly. So, and if the Americans jump in, then of course, it completely changes the game. Although I'm a little skeptical about how much the Americans will jump in. So,
Right.
In a rational framework, that is where things should happen. And beyond a point, the temperatures will be kept calm. But are we operating in a rational framework? And is the rationality on the other side the same as ours? Iran could just as well try and overwhelm the Israeli systems by launching attacks from all four directions.
Right.
You have Lebanon, you have the Houthis, you have whatever is left in Gaza, and of course you have Iran. So you could see a multi-directional kind of an attack. Will that overwhelm Israeli defenses? We don't know. But look, at the end of the day, Shiv, I think the most important thing is that it's impossible to predict how a war will proceed.
Yeah.
I think the most unpredictable thing in life is a war. Even the best of plans, and the general is out here. I'm sure he'll bear me out. Even the best laid plans go awry the moment the first shot is fired. So let's hope it does not go in that direction. But who can say?
Very, very interesting scenario. Nothing can actually be predicted. And yes, General Yadlin is possibly in the best possible position to give us, an assessment of what those options are. But General, does Iran have any options, short of offensive action against Israel? Any kind of, direct offensive action against Israel? Is there anything that Iran can do? And the reason I ask is because, within Iran, if they don't act, at least from the outside, it will be seen, as having buckled down or, not kept its promise to avenge what happened in Tehran, etc. But obviously, these are more complicated than, being seen from the outside. Does Iran have options short of offensive action, sir?
Yeah, no doubt that Iran wants to retaliate and Iran wants to deter Israel from a future operation. So the formula, how to deter enough, how to retaliate enough, and in the same time, not pass a threshold into a full-scale war is a dilemma all over the Middle East in the last 10 months. Israel vis-a-vis Hezbollah, Hezbollah vis-a-vis Israel, and so Israel and Iran. So the Iranians can do what they did in the past, encourage their proxies, Hezbollah, the Shia militia in Iraq, the Houthis. As you said, nothing was left in Gaza that really can do something, but the other proxies may attack Israel. And Hezbollah, I think, going to attack Israel. But the Iranians, I think, will look maybe now, when they understand that their sovereignty was not violated by a missile attack or an air attack. It was a domestic bomb that killed Hania. Yes, it was humiliating for them, but it was not a military attack. So they may try and target Israeli leaders, Israeli generals, Israeli scientists, whether in the globe. They have tried it in India, they have tried it in Thailand, they have tried it in Europe, or targeting a pinpoint attack on Israelis in Israel. But this, I think, will make sure that they are not even close to the threshold of going into a full-scale war, mutual assured devastation for both.
This is a very, very interesting observation. The possibility, the fact that Israel hasn't formally accepted responsibility or taken credit for the attack has left a big layer of ambiguity and uncertainty and deniability over what happened to Ismail Haniyeh, and that could be used by Iran, to do something that isn't a direct military response, but something else to, quote unquote, take revenge for that attack. Sushant Sareen, bringing you back in, zooming out a little bit, there's already the Russia-Ukraine war that's on, between those two countries. what would happen? You're right when you say nothing is predictable in how war could break out, what forms it could take, etc. But should there be a worst case scenario where there are open hostilities between Iran and Israel directly and all the other players involved in that area, what kind of impact would it happen on the region? Could you paint us a picture? Because obviously, world leaders will be looking at this also as a possibility.
Look, Shiv, if we are getting into that speculation, then I think it will be a devastating impact. We really cannot fathom how widely the war will spread, how deep it will be, which all countries it will pull in. We've already seen, how the trade through the Red Sea has got disrupted because of the Houthi attacks, which are basically Iranian attacks. What happens if both in the Persian Gulf as well as in the Red Sea, trade starts getting disrupted? For example, we are at a distance, but even then our energy security depends on it. If it pulls in other countries, for example, Saudi Arabia or UAE or any of the other countries, then how does it impact the entire region? We have a large diaspora in this region. Our energy security is in this region. Our trade flows are through this region. So, we will tend to get pulled in one form or another. At least it'll have a devastating impact on us. But within the region, it will also have a very devastating effect. There are multiple kind of fault lines in the region, which could, which are somewhat under control, but which could burst out open. And then, all bets are off. Then you don't know which way this cookie is going to crumble. And then what are the big powers going to do? Will the Americans be there only to try and, at a very peripheral level, or will they jump in? What are the Europeans going to do? Actually, the Europeans don't count for anything anyways. They're very effective in that sense. So NATO is a work of fiction these days. But what are the Chinese going to do? What are the Russians going to do? Will they sense an opportunity? Now, all of this is at one level, but assuming it doesn't go to that level, I think the matter of concern for Israel is going to be that, the kind of dominance that Israel has enjoyed in terms of its military superiority and its ability to strike is steadily getting pared down. The kind of deterrence that Israel had is also getting pared down. The technology gaps are kind of closing in. Israel has certain degree of superiority, but that gap is closing very fast. So you have seen Hezbollah, attack the way they've been attacking. Israel retaliates, but that hasn't stopped what is coming into Israel. You've seen the Iranians actually up the ante steadily, also encircle Israel in some ways. So it's not a very happy situation if you are Israel. And then, of course, the good part is that countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, which are very important players in the region, have taken a far more moderate and sensible stand than, what was the earlier thing. Will that be able to help Israel to a point where it can restore that level of dominance which it had in the region? I think that is going to be the big question in the medium to long term.
Very, very interesting point. The gap is actually closing, and that also adds a layer to Israel's concerns. Speaking of America, since you mentioned it, Sushant, General Yadlin, last question to you. The American election, the looming American election, is right in front of us. Everyone is aware of that. There was a sense that when Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated, a ceasefire deal which America was in on, may have been on the table, and it was caught off guard by the assassination of the Hamas chief. How much of a factor do you think the American election will play on what happens next year?
I think the Americans want very much de-escalation in the Middle East and to end the war. The cornerstone for that is a hostages deal. The hostages deal was offered by Israel in early May. President Biden adopted it. It's become a UN Security Council resolution without any veto. And Hamas accepted it with 50 reservations. And the Americans say this is basically no. Then all the development, and now last night we heard from the Americans, the Egyptians, and the Qataris that they are summoning the sides to Qatar on 15th of August to renew the negotiation.
Right.
The Americans' interest is clear-cut, no escalation. However, the American commitment is also clear-cut to defend Israel and to create a counter-coalition to the Iranian excess of aggression, excess of terror, which include Iran, the Shia militia in Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Gaza. The Americans want to arrange a counter-coalition based on America, Europeans who suffered from the Houthis blocking the Red Sea, and the Arabs and the Israelis. This is the regional conflict, which is also behind it is the great power competition. Yeah. It's the Russians and the Chinese helping Iran, and Europe and America helping the Arab-Israeli elements. So always remember, it's not only a war in Gaza. It's a regional conflict and great power competition.
It literally is, if it becomes a huge worst-case scenario kind of escalation in many ways, like Sushant also said, it becomes a world war like every other conflict really is. Thank you very much, General Yadlin and Sushant Sareen, for joining me, putting perspective on a complicated issue on which there are no real answers, many ambiguities, many things that could change dramatically depending on where things actually go. We will continue to track this story on a daily basis. Appreciate your expert view on the story. Thank you so much to the both of you.